much. And welcome all. Thank you for joining us this evening and spending a beautiful Thursday evening with us to talk about this very important topic. My name is Sarah, and I'm one of Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake's program and outreach coordinators. And we're going to talk a little bit more about our organization and tonight's lineup. First, let's just go over a very quick tech orientation for our seasoned folks and new folks in the room. We ask that you keep yourself muted during the presentation, please, and also to turn your webcam off if you need to move around just to prevent any distractions. If you need help, please use the chat feature to direct message one of our IPC staff members that'll be happy to help. And last but not least, this session is being recorded, so please keep your camera off if you do not wish your image to be shown in this recording. So next, I'd just like us to take a moment. I want to thank some of the lovely people I get the privilege to work with. This is my home, my family, my group. We love working together. I'm actually in charge of the greater DMV area. So if you find yourself in Prince George's County, Montgomery, DC, Frederick, please reach out to me. My contact information below. Next, we'll talk about our program lineup. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement, and then we'll have an opening reflection. I'll get a chance to share our sponsors and funders who help make this work possible. We're going to talk a little bit about our One Water partnership, and you'll get a chance to meet our inspiring speakers tonight. Then we'll have time for discussion and a Q&A at the end before we close with a prayer. And so now I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge this land and these waters that were stewarded by many who came before. And please join me while muted in recognition, as today we hold space for reflection on and gratitude for the land upon which we live and the local waters that support and nourish us all. We recognize that this land and these waters were beloved by many who came before. We reflect together as people of faith in response to the calling of our hearts to come alongside the original stewards of this land and these waters that sustain us all. We seek to change the narrative of this story, our story, towards one of harmony with the gifts of creation and all living beings. And we ask you to honor and learn from their intimate connection, love, and appreciation for these sacred lands and waters. And I'm going to provide a link in the chat right now that will take you to a source that has a map, and that will just go over some of the Indigenous history, but it only goes back 1,000 years. So please keep in mind, we have more than 15,000 years of Indigenous history here. All right. Now I'd like to share a very simple and sweet Hindu hymn entitled Mother Earth. Mother Earth, with your oceans, rivers, and other bodies of water, you give us land to grow, grains on which our survival depends, milk, fruits, water, and cereals as we need to eat and drink. Please pour like a cow who never fails, 1,000 streams for treasure to enrich me. May you, our motherland, on whom we grow wheat, rice, and barley, be nourished by the cloud and loved by the rain. So thank you so much for taking that moment of acknowledgement and reflection with me. Now I want to shift gears and share gratitude for the sponsors that help make this work possible. And as you can see on the next slide, all this support gives us the capacity as a connector organization. Love this illustration of a puzzle. It kind of really paints a picture of how we help congregations in search of resources to pursue environmental stewardship projects with the support of local government agencies, technical partners, and of course our partner congregations. And if we move to the next slide,
I'm going to put this
if you want to find out more.
Okay, I already had some today. Thanks.
Richard, please mute.
Thank you so much. This is our One Water partnership. So this is a really cool map that you can see how many congregations are already partnering with us. And you can learn more. We'll provide a link if you want to sign our pledge and join this growing movement. And we also want to mention, for any of our green teams out there looking to grow their team or start their team or just gain some new knowledge and skills, we have a June training coming right around the corner. And you can find out more information about that on our event page. And our next training is this June, as you can see on the next slide. All right, perfect. So let's delve straight into the heart of tonight's discussion. Our focus this evening is showcasing the remarkable collaboration underway with one of our esteemed technical partners. They're bringing their expertise in stormwater management best practices. They're instrumental in aiding our congregations, and they provide guidance on project design and assisting in securing funding sources. We're going to explore some of these invaluable contributions that Straughan Environmental has helped us with. We are very lucky to have here with us Cody Little. She is from Straughan Environmental. She's a water resource engineer who works to improve our local communities and improve the way we interact with natural systems. So please welcome Cody.
All right, can I go ahead and share my screen?
Go right ahead. Floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Can everyone see that? All right. Thank you all so much. My name is Cody Little. I'm a water resources engineer at Straughan Environmental, as Sarah mentioned. And I am so happy to be with you this evening. As a person of faith myself, I'm so appreciative of the work that Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake does, and it's really great to be able to work with you all and your congregations on that. So this evening, I'll be talking mostly about a program by the Chesapeake Bay Trust called the Community-Based Organization Capacity Building Initiative, which I know is a bit of a mouthful, but it's a great way to get support and funding for your environmental projects. So a bit about the capacity building program. It's run by the Chesapeake Bay Trust in partnership with several connector organizations, including Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. And it's open to community-based organizations, including houses of worship, that are working on community and environmental projects. So participants in the program receive assistance from a technical team, which in our case for green infrastructure projects usually means that we're helping you to come up with a workable plan and then apply to grants to actually design and implement those projects. So the Capacity Building Initiative is not a grant itself, but it's a program to help you get a grant. And the Capacity Building Initiative is run annually. So if you're interested, please reach out to your regional coordinator at IPC to see whether you meet eligibility criteria. Some examples of highly eligible groups are going to be your underserved and minority congregations that are facing flooding on their properties, or congregations that have stormwater management issues. The program is also specific to the Chesapeake Bay watershed, with priority given to locations that are in subbasins that where the projects can make a big impact. So again, if you're interested, please reach out to IPC to see if this program is a good fit for your organization or your house of worship. So let me back up for a few minutes and talk about what I mean when I say green infrastructure. And if you're a pro and you already know all this, you can tune out for this slide. But assuming that not everyone knows what this is, I'd like to describe it a little bit. We can categorize stormwater infrastructure as either green or gray. So gray infrastructure is going to be your stormwater system of inlets, pipes, treatment plants, things like that. And it feels very much like the built environment, you know. And green infrastructure is still designed, it's still built, but it's meant to work more with natural systems and reduce the amount of stormwater that's entering the gray system of pipes. And green infrastructure is an important complement to our network of gray infrastructure because we are getting more intense storms as the years go on, and the pipes and storm drains just aren't equipped to handle that. So it's important to have both gray and green infrastructure to help reduce flooding and improve water quality. There are a number of best management practices, or BMPs, you'll hear that acronym a lot, that are commonly used in green stormwater management. And so this is a non-exhaustive list of those BMPs, and it's arranged in rough order of bang for your buck. But of course, cost effectiveness is going to vary quite a bit based on individual site conditions and whether it's a new project or a retrofit. But in general, things like swales at the top of the list will be relatively simple and inexpensive, while things like permeable pavement still effective, but are going to have higher upfront costs as well as continued maintenance. So bioswales, if you've heard this term before, a swale is essentially a ditch. It's going to carry water. It's got a slate grade. It's going to carry water. Here you see one in the middle of a parking lot. Usually it's carrying water to another BMP, another practice, whether it's a detention pond or a rain garden or something like that. And the bio in the word just means that there are plants there that usually native plants that help water infiltrate as it flows through the swale. Grass and forest buffers, often these are used in agricultural settings where you have a buffer of either grass or a forest strip in between the worked farmland and a waterway, as you can see in this picture, to kind of reduce the impact of the worked land on the waterway. But this concept is also transferable to urban settings. So you might have a grass buffer that's interrupting a paved stretch. So say you have a big parking lot over here and another big parking lot over here. If you can put even a small stretch of grass in between, that will stop the flow of stormwater, let it infiltrate a little bit, slow it down. So that can be really useful. Detention ponds and wetlands. This here is a gravel wetland that Straughan designed. These are usually going to be larger practices. As you can see here, it's along the side of a highway. So maybe not on your congregation's property necessarily, but these are, as the name suggests, detention pond. It's going to detain the water. If you have a large rain event, the water is going to go into the pond and stay there for a while rather than going directly into the storm drain pipes. Bioretention, similar concept. This is a bioretention practice that was installed at the last place I worked prior to Straughan, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Bioretention is basically another word for a large engineered rain garden. So you're going to direct downspouts into this practice, and the native plants that you plant in there are going to help the water infiltrate, and they're going to uptake some of the stormwater as well into the plant. And it provides a wonderful habitat for other native critters that, like pollinators that like to be in these spaces. Impervious surface reduction is what it sounds like. So if you've got a structure that you don't need, if you've got asphalt that you don't need or concrete that you don't need, just take it out, and that reduces the burden of stormwater runoff because it provides more space for water to infiltrate into the ground. Urban tree planting. Trees have so many benefits. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. It might not be the most cost effective in terms of stormwater management just because there's only so much water that one tree can take up, but it's still a nice option. And permeable pavement, likewise, very effective. Here in this photo, you've got conventional pavement on the left and permeable pavement on the right. So you can really see, you've got ponding on the left and the water is gone on the right. However, it is going to be more expensive because it's got high upfront costs, and then you do have to maintain it. Essentially, you have to vacuum it to keep those pores open to make sure that the water can still infiltrate. So now that we've described some of the types of practices that we might consider, let me talk about the technical assistance program again. The technical partners that are a part of the capacity building initiative might change from year to year, depending on who gets the work. But for the past 2 years, it's been Gaiacian Services, which is run by Ashley Trout, and he does a fantastic job with keeping us on a timeline and supports a lot of the grant proposal preparation itself. And Cityscape Engineering and Straughan Environmental are 2 engineering firms that provide recommendations for your site and approximate sizing and cost estimates for any BMPs that we're going to propose on your property. And so we generally focus on one of 2 different grant opportunities with each house of worship, depending on which one fits their situation better. The first is the Resiliency Through Restoration Initiative from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. And this grant provides up to $100,000 for a design and permitting project, a design build project, or construction of a previously designed project. And their goal with this grant is to restore, create, and strengthen natural infrastructure to enhance community resilience to flooding, erosion, and sea level rise. So if you are in a coastal community, if you have flooding on your property, if you have erosion on your property, this grant could be a good fit for you. The other grant that we often focus on is the Chesapeake Bay Trust's Watershed Assistance Grant Program. And likewise, this generally provides up to $100,000 for project design or watershed planning and program development. Now, the latter is usually larger scale, like on a watershed scale. So maybe if you're a municipality or a county, you're thinking about that. Most congregations are probably just going to apply to the project design track. And their goal with this grant is to improve water quality and resiliency in local streams, rivers, and the Chesapeake Bay. So if you're in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, this could be a great grant for you. We've found that one of these two is usually a good fit for the green infrastructure needs on your property, but we may potentially recommend other grants as applicable. So for example, we've helped congregations apply to the Chesapeake Bay Trust's Outreach and Restoration Grant, which is, as the name suggests, more about outreach and community engagement around these types of projects. Okay, one more text slide, and then I promise we will get into the pictures and stories. Please take a screenshot of this slide if you're so inclined. I don't have time to go through it in detail, but this is a really useful thought exercise to work through with your organization or congregation's leadership early on in the process when you're thinking about applying for a grant for a particular project. The first column is borrowed from the National Aquarium, and the second column is borrowed from our partners at Cityscape Engineering. And your application for a grant will be stronger if you go in with answers to these questions in mind, how you're actually going to implement this project. And I want to call your attention to the last bullet, which is about 10% of the budget for internal or overhead expenses. And that small amount may really be a big help in building your long-term capacity as an organization to manage these types of projects. Okay, enough about that. So the first step, once you've been connected to technical partners, is that we will come out and do a preliminary site assessment. So for example, this is a photo of us meeting with members of Ames United Methodist Church in Bel Air, and their priorities were to alleviate ponding and icing by one of their church entrances, and also to remove a curb that had been previously installed to help redirect stormwater flow, but it was posing an obstacle for some of their older and disabled parishioners. Their property is also 77% impervious surfaces, so they wanted to capture or redirect as much of that runoff as possible within the limited space, in the limited pervious space that they had available. So we walked their property to look for the best options, and after completing review, we recommended the Watershed Assistance Grant for Ames UMC because it aligned with their needs and opportunities. So following the site visit, we prepared this concept map of proposed BMPs. So it's too small to see all of them, but we've got a little bit of permeable pavement here in the back of the church. We've got several bioretention and rain garden practices. We've got a few cisterns to capture the stormwater runoff from the roof of the church. We've got a few native plant landscaping areas, so different types of projects. And we also provided a rough project budget and worked really hand in hand with the folks at Ames to write a proposal narrative for that grant application. And they were awarded the grant a couple of months ago, so that was a positive outcome. And it's worth noting that there are other steps to the grant application process that we can't provide for you that you'll need to complete as an applicant, such as getting letters of support and meeting with a representative from the grantor and meeting any permitting authorities like your city or county if possible. But the technical team will keep you on track, will help you to complete all those steps and get that application in on time. Finally, I want to share a little bit of what I learned at the last place I worked. So before I came to Straughan, I was working at a faith-based nonprofit in Detroit, Michigan. And so I know what it's like to be on the nonprofit side of the grant application. I know that some of the cost estimates for design and construction can be way out of the price range for a small nonprofit or house of worship without sufficient grant support. And so that's why the grants are there. So some ways to give your organization a competitive edge in grant applications or to get projects done with a limited budget are going to require some thinking outside the box. So for example, in the picture on the left, we wanted to remove some of the parking lot because we didn't need all the parking space and it was excess impervious surface and we were paying a stormwater fee on it. But paving a parking lot is expensive. So we partnered with a local coalition called Land and Waterworks, and they connected us to Detroit Training Center, which is a workforce development program that trains people how to operate heavy machinery. So their students got to learn and practice operating this equipment on our parking lot, and we got the parking lot depaved for free. So it's looking and being open for those kinds of partnerships and opportunities can really help you out. And while I was there, we also installed a lot of rain gardens around the property with funding from a lot of different grants. And a lot of the time we had concurrent or overlapping grants to fund everything we wanted to do. And that may be the case for you as well, depending on your goals. And I believe that what gave us a competitive edge in the grant applications is that we, with the help of partners, we were hosting educational programs to teach both kids and adults about these concepts and even how to build and maintain rain gardens. So here you see some students doing an infiltration experiment where they see how quickly water can flow through different materials. So taking these innovative approaches, if you have the ability to do so, may help you get grants and also help your community along the way. So thank you so much for having me. I put my contact info up here if you want to reach out. I will also answer any questions you have. I think we're doing Q&A later. So I'll hand it back to Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Katie, for that wonderful presentation. It's great to hear. You know, I have the privilege of working alongside your organization, but just to hear how much support you're really providing our congregations is wonderful to hear. And just to make a note about the framing your project slide, that's a really great exercise as well. I think sometimes maintenance is an afterthought. So as a congregation, as a green team, when you're thinking about these projects, it's really great to think about the long-term sustainability and the success of your project. And maintenance is a huge part of that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I love the success story at the end. That's great. Anytime we can engage the youth and adults at the same time is really wonderful. All right. I am going to thank you so much. All right. Now I would like to introduce someone very special to IPC. She has served as a previous board member on our program committee. She's also served on the advisory board of the Baltimore Food and Faith Project at Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future. She's also a regulatory and compliance engineer for the Maryland Department of the Environment. She's also a member of the Islamic Society of Baltimore's Green Team. This congregation has taken part in an incredible restoration effort, and she's going to talk more to us about that effort and the process and a little bit more. Thank you so much. Please welcome Ayana.
Good evening. I'm not sure I'm able to share my screen just yet. Okay, it's coming, I think. Do you see my screen?
Looks good.
Okay. So I'm going to talk, give the story of how ISB was able to secure some grants. So I'm having a little trouble here with my screen, but hopefully I should be able to do it well now. All right, there it goes. So I'm just going to talk about our journey and how we were able to work through this. I was on the committee early when we first started this grants journey. And so we had a committee of about 3 or 4 people And what we started with was just organizing ourselves to the point where we had team leaders, where we had designated people to do
Yeah,
the jobs. Or
yeah.
Well, we know how to repair that, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And that
Out of sight.
Can we mute? Sorry, I'm so sorry, Ayana. Hold on one second.
It's just $1 million here, so we
Okay.
So the way that we designed our committee was there was a designated grant coordinator, and then that coordinator was actually the person that also submitted our grant applications. But it just depends on how a committee would like to delegate the responsibilities. It's very important to read through the entire grant application or grant opportunity and understand what is required in the deadlines for submittal. I recommend that you make a schedule of your deadlines for the grant. Make a checklist of all of the documents that you need to include in the application. We schedule regular meetings beginning bi-weekly, and then as the deadline came closer, we would schedule weekly meetings and make sure that our assigned tasks were completed before each meeting or by the time of each meeting. Put it on your schedule what the milestone dates are. So if it's something you want to accomplish by, let's say, May 3rd, put that milestone date on a timeline, and make sure that if it's not met, someone is following up on that task or assignment. We recommend many of the grants allow you to submit, or you do receive assistance. I believe there was someone previously said you can receive technical assistance. So part of that is your application sound? Does it make sense? Have you included everything that you need to include for the grant? So have someone or another group of people review your draft grant proposal before you do your final submittal, and make sure that you are submitting your grant by the deadlines. So with that being said, ISB has been able to secure these 5 grants that you see here. We had received or were awarded an urban trees grant. And we received the watershed assistance grant. We received a youth environmental education program grant. And also a grant to construct the design that we received from the watershed assistance grant design funding. And then we also have received, or ISB has received the Green Streets, Green Jobs, Green Towns grant. So it has been a good process for us to be able to receive this funding. So here's a picture of the planting of the trees. So we received 40 trees, which we placed in a buffer zone. So it's called a forest buffer zone because we have a stream that runs straight through the property. And in order for it to be more environmentally friendly, we moved the parking lot back about, I think it's a good 20-25 feet from that stream to prevent all of the pollution from vehicles, from tires, from car leaks, things like that going into the stream. And this is where we planted many of those trees. And you see here, this is actually students from the middle school, the private middle school, planting these trees. But it was not just the middle school. We also had educational training. The teachers were involved with the tree planting. And then we also had seniors And then from everything from the preschool all the way up to the middle school were involved in our tree planting. So that was pleasant. And I did plant a tree. There's no picture of me, thank goodness, of me planting any trees. But yeah, so it was very much a community project. This is a draft design for our conservation landscape design. So this is the image of that draft design, and it went really well. There was a long process to get to the final, but I believe it went really well, the whole process for us. So we also received this Youth Environmental Education Program grant, and I put these two images here because ISB is actually in Gwynns Falls watershed, but we're like right on the edge between Gwynn Falls and Patapsco, I guess, watershed areas. But that's why I put these two images there to see, just to show you kind of like where we are. We're right in between I-70 and 695. And then this is the construction funding that ISB was able to secure. And then the previous speaker talked about the bioswales, and that's part of what we are having our design bioswales, and then including permeable pavement. And that's just an image indicating what that would be. You know, we would have something where the water and runoff from our parking lot is in some way cleaned up before it actually goes into the design sewer systems. And this final grant here is Green Streets, Green Jobs, Green Towns. And this basically helping us to green up our property. It's a large campus. And then also we have to remember that when we do something, our vision for what we're doing now is something that affects the generations that come after us. And so we have to think in the ways of, how can I clean this up now, not just for this generation, but for perhaps the 5, 6, 7 generations that will come after us. And that's the mindset I think that we need to be in as we do projects. And that is, and these actually are pictures from the property. This is on the left is a image of the stream that runs through the property. And then we actually have signs on our property that indicate this is a forest buffer zone, and for vehicles not to go into that area, and keep it as environmentally sound as we can keep it. And I will stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, Kayana. I really just want to take a moment to reflect on your timeline journey. I think that's really helpful for folks to see because as some of us may know, deadlines have a habit of sneaking up on us. So I think that's a really smart practice to, do that in the initial stages. And I also want to just, just say my appreciation and gratitude for your continued support and commitment to environmental stewardship and care for all creation. It's just, you're a leading example of what we want folks to do. So thank you so much for sharing that story.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
And I want to introduce now our last speaker for the evening. It's this evening is just kind of flying by. We are very lucky to have Dylan here with us. He's actually from the Eastern Shore. He's from the city of Salisbury. And not only is he a sustainability specialist, he's a longtime Maryland resident, and he has a passion for addressing climate change through sustainable environmental policies and nurturing collaborative community relationships. And he's going to talk to us a little bit more on the perspective of the reviewer side, which will be really helpful for the folks tonight. And so I'll give it over to Dylan.
Hi, everyone. Can you see my screen okay?
Looks good.
Fantastic. All right, well, thank you for the introduction, Sarah. Yes, my name is Dylan Lakonich. I am with the city of Salisbury. I have quite a multifaceted role, but among my roles is to help with the review of different grant proposals, either through the partnership that the city of Salisbury has with Chesapeake Bay Trust, or just in general aid to partner organizations. They're frequently looking for third-party reviewers to relieve themselves of any sort of conflict of interest. And I myself am actually someone who frequently applies for grants, and so I have sort of a multiple perspectives as to grant applications. However, I'm sort of going to give you a perspective of a reviewer. Whenever you might submit an application, so what we're looking for, what we're not looking for, and what you can do to sort of make your project stand out. And I'm happy to, of course, answer any questions later on as to how you can better write an application in the future. So really the overall perspective I'm looking at is, does it fit our mission? And something I'd like to just address is why we as an organization or other organizations make grants in general. If you think about it, we could probably go directly towards different landowners or congregations, whatever it may be, and say, hey, we need restoration credit for a different program, do this, and we'll provide you the funds. But the reason we're willing to provide different grants is for competition that might not be there otherwise, for the sake of equity, for flexibility in our projects, better stimulation of public interest, and the sort of experimental nature of different grant proposals that might come our way. And that's really the why, but you're here for the how. And really, it kind of just comes down to identifying your organization's goals, remediation efforts. It should start there. If you're looking to improve the heat island effect in your community, if you're looking to improve energy usage, water quality, flood remediation, all sorts of different things, then go from there and then find those grants which explicitly fit that area of concern. And IPC, they've been really, really great about helping people find the exact grants that they're looking for. I've seen some of their outreach coordinators really explore different grants with different congregations, and I love to see that. Straughan seems to be doing the same thing whenever they make a site visit, and that's fantastic. So there's plenty of people who are out there who are going to be able to help you find the exact right grant, like we've talked about before. But the third is really just doing the cooking, right? And I have this fun little GIF from, I believe the show is called Lazy Town. But you're gonna have different things that are gonna help you with your grant application. And you can consider the RFPs, the NOFOs, the RFAs as sort of like your legal framework for how you're gonna make your grant application. So anywhere you're gonna be pointed to, they're gonna include that information for you. They're gonna include the timeline, they're gonna include the deadline. But really when you're breaking it down, you want to check on a few things and you really want to see where your project stacks, right? So, we have different organizations that are eligible for different projects. You as congregations are likely going to be available for, just about any grant that's out there. I don't commonly see nonprofits not listed as eligible organizations. What, is very important is making sure that your project is eligible. So there might be some grant programs out there that are not necessarily explicit as to the exact type of activity that they're looking for. CBT's Outreach and Restoration Grant is one that the city of Salisbury contributes a significant amount of funds to. Outreach and restoration, what does that mean? That can be pollinator gardens, that can be flyers. We've funded, radio programs before. So, really check to see what exactly the project is that you're trying to implement and if it fits the program that you're looking at. And if not, try to explore other programs. Something that's extremely important is checking a cost match or a cost share. Some grants do require that you contribute. This might be for the reasons of just making sure that the grantee is serious about the project. It might be, funding constrictions, whatever it may be. Pretty much any grant out there is going to give you a narrative template. And this is basically just a list of questions that's going to help you, provide the information to the grantor that they need to assess your project. And, while you might feel incentivized to get very creative with your answers, I highly encourage you to compare this narrative with the evaluation criteria. You might find the evaluation criteria with the RFP, with the NOFO RFA. It might be at a separate document. Different organizations, agencies, sometimes do that differently. But surely somewhere there will be an evaluation criteria for you to go over. And this will show you a different point system. So it might be a matter of, your community engagement, the established partnerships that you have for the project, the likelihood of success, cost competitiveness, community served, different things. And so when you're looking over this criteria, you really want to think to yourself, how can I apply this to the appropriate sections in the narrative? So, a typical thing that you'll find at the very top of any narrative is going to be, give us a general description of your project. And you want to touch on every little thing that's going to be in that evaluation criteria, but in those more specific areas, what sort of communities are you hoping to engage with this project? If they're very focused on racial equity, on outreach to underserved communities, you may want to consider how you can actually hit that point with your project. Of course, I'm never encouraging you to lie, but maybe tailoring your project just slightly so it fits the grantor's, I guess, goal, what their vision, their mission, is something that people do, and as long as it can truly be achieved, it's something that may help your chances. Like I said, you want to gain support of relevant parties, and you want to do that early. It's not a good look to go towards your a potential partner, whether that be the municipality or your county, whatever it may be, at the last second saying, hey, please sign this. Engage them early and say, hey, are you interested? Would you be willing to write a letter of support, or maybe just sign one that we could write for you? And like I said, just go through that narrative template. And us as grantors, we're willing to work with you. If you see a question that you're not totally sure what exactly we're asking, or how this fits in with our mission, give us an email, give us a call. We'll be happy to say, oh, well, this is sort of what we're looking at. This is our lens on the specific issue. Again, never encouraging anyone to say anything that they're not going to follow up on, but it's going to be very helpful with your ability to make a competitive grant application. Something that I see sometimes as a grantor is people including all sorts of different things in various locations. Most grantors are going to allow you to include an appendices, an appendix, or whatever you prefer. And typically this is where you want to include, your supporting documents. That could be, photos, documents, letters of support, maps, etc. Your narrative typically should be sufficiently detailed. It should be, appropriately brief. Don't cut very important details, but it should be focused, and that's the most important thing. I've seen applications where, it seemed like it might be a great project, but because it wasn't focused, because the information was everywhere, I just couldn't follow it. And ultimately, I didn't suggest it for funding, just because I didn't feel confident that if I suggested it for funding, that it could go through. So you may feel tempted to spice things up, to make things have a bit of flair. Flair, if you want to include that, keep it subtle into a minimum and include it in the appendices. We have a lot to review and not a lot of time, so just be mindful of that. So if you do want your project to stand out, again, try not to lean too heavily on spicing things up. Really just try to make sure that your project has strong merit, right? So strongly fit the mission of the grantor, potentially serve a community or region that may be in need or may not otherwise receive funding. The project, might serve as inspiration for future projects. It still has a high likelihood of success. So, Katie with Straughan was talking earlier about, thinking outside of the box. Grantors love to see that sort of thing. As long as you can convey that you still have a strong belief that it's going to be a success, we would like to promote a project like that in the future. So that's a great way to stand out. And being cost competitive, we want to see a great outcome at a competitive price, right? Just like anything else. And kind of like I was saying, we want to promote projects that think outside the box. So typically, with different grant programs, you're going to see highlights. This is a snippet that I took from CBT's website, with our contribution to their outreach and restoration project. They're talking about, different projects that have happened in our area, and you're going to see this pretty commonly. Sometimes grantors may even provide you with the proposal that's been submitted. It's not too common. They'll typically sort of give you a gist of what the project was, but that might give you some inspiration. You can try to basically copy it for your congregation, or you can, take from it and build off of that. But yeah, those are the different ways you can stand out. And yeah, that's my perspective as a reviewer. So thank you for listening.
Dylan, thank you so much for giving us a really great perspective from a reviewer's, lens, especially how to follow the narrative template and encouraging folks to reach out and ask for help and ask questions. I think that's great advice. Sometimes I think people, maybe don't know that they can reach out and ask for help. So I appreciate those tidbits. And last but not least, especially keeping the narrative brief and concise so that it's easy to follow. Also, again, I think folks don't realize, there's tons of applications coming in, and it is a lot. It's a time heavy load. So keeping things very concise and brief and to the point is very helpful advice. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for stopping share. That's perfect, actually, because now there were already questions coming in. So there seems to be quite a big interest. And I want to open up the chat so I can just see a couple questions, and then we'll open up the floor. And if you want to raise your hands or unmute, that's fine. But folks, we're definitely having a couple questions, and I want to scroll up to the top, and there's one that caught my eye. And we'll see who this can go to. I think one was already asked. There was a couple questions about stream restoration, and that maybe that wasn't talked out a lot, but I feel like, that's not, they're not gone out of favor. It's just dependent on the location. Anyone correct me, any of our speakers correct me if I'm wrong. We have one question about, are there any risks involved in this process? Meaning, is there a possibility of disallowances or incomplete projects? What would that look like?
I can answer that question if no one else would like to. In terms of risks, I see you said possibility of disallowance. That is a possibility. It depends on your organization, but pretty consistently across the board, if you were to apply for a grant that you don't genuinely have the capacity to take on, think about it as like a business, right? If someone, hires you for a service or pays you for a product and you don't deliver, you may not want to repeat business with that individual. So, I advise against taking on projects that you may not have the capacity for. There are lots of grants out there that do seek to provide technical assistance so that you can, build towards capacity. It's another thing that you can consult with a grantor about, like we're looking to take on this project. This is sort of the means we have for capacity. What do you think? But a lot of these sorts of different projects, you'll be contracting maybe an engineering firm, and they'll pretty much do the work from that point. So it's hard to say, across the board, you need X, Y, or Z to achieve a project. I'll just talk with the grantor, like I said. Good question.
Yeah, that was, and thanks for that thoughtful response. Those are good things to keep in mind. I saw another question about regarding the buffers. Are only native grasses used in forest buffers? That was just one question about plants in these best management practices. I'm not sure if you mind if I put you on the spot, Katie?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I mean, native species are always going to be your best bet in any of these best management practices that that you're designing and implementing. A lot of people aren't aware of that and will include non-native species because they like the way they look, or whatnot. But yeah, native plants are going to be your best bet because not only are they good for the native critters like pollinators, but they're also, I mean, they evolved to be in our environment in this part of the world, and so they're going to be hardier and last longer.
Thank you so much for that response. I'm also seeing another one in the chat. I thought I read somewhere that certain stream restorations were not successful, maybe made things worse or didn't last, and grantors weren't confident that the methods are successful long term. Is that the case?
Yeah, I can jump into that as well, unless somebody else would like to. My understanding is that stream restoration has not gone out of favor. I know that Straughan still does, numerous stream restorations for various projects. I'm aware that this is a contentious issue, and there's a lot of public perception that it's, destroying the stream somehow. And I want to encourage you to think about the long term, as this question implies. It may look like you're tearing everything down in the short term to do this restoration, but the ultimate long-term health of the stream, restoring it to a meandering shape that is going to have a wide enough floodplain and reduce the erosion associated with large storm events. That's the goal of a stream restoration. And so if it's designed well and implemented well and maintained well, it is effective.
I appreciate that response. It's good to have this type of understanding because from an engineer perspective, right, you're thinking of that long-term goal, and maybe sometimes there's a disconnect. So thank you for sharing that.
It looks like we have somebody's hand up. Mark,
Thank you.
did you have a
Yes,
question?
on urban tree planting, when I was a park ranger with Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning, we stopped all the grants for urban tree planting the way they were done because half of them failed in the first year. Half the saplings died from invasive multiple rows, for example. So the guidance to everybody here in this room is make sure that the grant includes that the grantee comes back next year and saves the saplings. Do about 10% of the work as the first year, but do it. It's important. And come back on the fifth year. And then your urban tree plantings will be successful. Otherwise, half of them will fail.
I appreciate you sharing that, Mark. I had not heard that before, so thank you for sharing that. And someone just put another question in the chat. We've heard a lot of examples of land management grants. Are there any grant windows that are focused on community outreach, awareness, and behavior change? And we did talk about some of those earlier. Katie, you gave a great presentation as to some of those grants, and then Dylan made a really great point that you might actually make, and please correct me, Dylan, if I'm wrong, might make your grant more competitive if you include that type of aspect into it, right? If you want to do community outreach, you want to include maybe youth education, it will make your grant more competitive.
Yes, certainly with just about any grant application or request for proposal that I've seen, they do like to see community engagement. They do like to see community involvement. But I believe Patrick is asking about grants that are focused primarily on outreach and things like that. And yes, particularly is actually the one that Salisbury contributes to, CBT's outreach and restoration grant program. And it's those two words, outreach and restoration. So it can be, either or. That program in our partnership, we've, like I said, funded, radio talk shows. And that's purely just talking about the environment. Not every episode pertains solely to, stormwater and, other aspects of restoration. I believe some of the episodes talked purely about environmental policy or different organizations in the area. So, there's plenty of organizations out there that like to see that sort of thing. Restoring the environment is not just about, improving a stream. It's also about getting the community involved.
Thanks so much for clarifying that, Dylan. And it's very hard to believe we're coming up really close on the hour here. I
Yeah,
want
it
to
looks
give a
like
last.
Bonnie has a question, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to say that thanks to the presenters, couple points, and I think Ayanna's still here. They are a great example of stick-to-itiveness. That when you apply for a grant, you won't necessarily get it the first time. So always meet with the funder after to find out why you didn't maybe get the best score and how you can improve. It's way easier to resubmit a grant once it's written, and just improve on it the next time. And the other point I'd like to make about what we've done at ISB is sometimes their particular project, NIFWF would fund some things and CBT would fund other things, and we had a kind of mix and match, and we actually had the funders talking to each other, so that, because especially Dylan mentioned match, so they actually play match to each other, so you want to coordinate that. And I would just say that I know it's a little counterintuitive, but the funders really do want to give the money away, so they want to work with you to help you put your best foot forward so that they can fund you. So that they are really wonderful. All the ones that I've worked with have been wonderful in trying to make things work. When they recognize that there's a good project, they want to make things work. So be sure to reach out to your IPC coordinator so they can help you to connect you with the right programs, and just be patient. And if you don't win it the first time, we'll stick with you and try again if we're not successful.
Very good points, Bonnie. Thank you.
I am very grateful for those points, Bonnie, especially with the stick-to-itiveness and just perseverance. And so it's always good to know that, again, if you don't get it the first time, second, third time's the charm, so that this is something that's, it takes time. So thank you for reminding folks about that. Also, thank you so much, Anna, for putting the link to the survey. We just put a link in to the chat. Please let us know what you thought about tonight's program, and if you have any ideas for future topics. We have a couple more minutes left, so I do want to just open the floor. This is a last call for questions. Does anyone have any other questions while we have our amazing speakers here with us tonight? And feel free to unmute. Sorry, I can't see everyone, so please feel free to unmute.
Well, since this is religion, can I share something about Christianity, the Bible? It turns out that when the Bible said man shall have dominion over the earth, at the time that went into the Bible, the word dominion meant be a steward of, take care of. And then the meaning of the word dominion changed 600 years later. So that's creation cares.
Yeah, thank you for that point, Mark. And I will say that all of our core major religions have the same tenet. It really is woven through almost all of the scriptures. There is some point to environmental stewardship, no matter where you're at. And so I appreciate you bringing that up, because it is our moral obligation to take care of our environment. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you again, Anna, for putting our survey link. I'm very interested to hear what people think. And then as we are about to close and say goodbye for the evening, this is actually an old favorite of mine. I did attend Catholic school in my prior years, and this was one that stuck with me. I love this. It's a traditional Irish blessing. May the blessings of light be on you, light without and light within. May the blessed sunlight shine upon you and warm your heart till it glows, like a great fire, so that the stranger may come and warm himself at it, as well as the friend. And may the light shine out of the eyes of you like a candle set in the window of a house, bidding the wanderer to come in out of the storm. And may the blessings of the rain be on you, the soft, sweet rain. May it fall upon your spirit so that all the little flowers may spring up and shed their sweetness on the air. And may the blessings of the great rains be on you, that they beat upon your spirit and wash it fair and clean, and leave there many a shining pool, and sometimes a star. And may the blessings of the earth be on you, the great round earth. You may ever have a kindly greeting for people you pass as you are going along the roads. And now may the Lord bless you and bless you kindly. Thank you all so much. And thank you again for our amazing speakers. We really appreciate all the invaluable knowledge that you've given to us, and it was great to hear about, Ayana's wonderful success story. We're hoping other people reach out. We have a lot of follow-up in the post-recording, and so there'll be some additional links to some of these current funding opportunities available. And I'll also give a link to our staff page, so if you're looking for your regional coordinator, you'll be able to do that as well. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great evening.